Have you ever sat down to tackle a really challenging task? Maybe writing a huge report or, trying to master some complex new software.
Mm.
And you just feel that immediate, overwhelming agitation, that internal resistance where the impulse to procrastinate is much stronger than the desire to start.
Yeah, we all do. We wait for motivation, right? Or for that perfect state of flow before we even think about opening the document.
Exactly. But what if that initial frustration, that stress, what if that wasn't a signal to stop?
What if it was the precise neurochemical cue that your brain is firing up the machinery for real lasting change?
That's what we're getting into today. We're looking at a blueprint for controlling our focus, for accelerating learning and managing our emotional states.
And not just by willpower, but by leveraging our actual biology.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Mm.
Our source material today is really rooted in the practical applications of neuroscience, drawn from research by neurobiologist Dr. Andrew Huberman.
Yeah, his work on self-regulation and intentional action is it's groundbreaking.
So the mission here seems pretty straightforward. We want to stop being, passive passengers in our own nervous systems.
Right. We want to identify the biological levers, the specific behaviors that can shift us from a state of, say, frenzied distraction to one of high focus and calm.
So today we're going to unpack why that agitation isn't just something to avoid, but it's actually required for deep adult learning.
We'll also show you a specific two-part breathing technique that is probably the fastest way to hit the nervous system's reset button.
And finally, we'll look at how simply changing the way you look at the world, literally look at it, can save you vast amounts of your precious mental energy.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one.
Okay, let's jump right in.
So before we get to the takeaways, we just need a quick primer on the fundamental sequence of your mind.
Okay.
The nervous system is always trying to, orchestrate the body and link your external world to your internal world. There's a process for this called interoception.
Interoception. So
Yes.
that's basically just my perception of my own internal state, like my heart rate, if I'm hungry.
That's it, exactly. And the science shows the nervous system moves through 5 key functions and in a specific order.
Yeah, what are they?
It goes sensation, then perception, then feelings, thoughts, and finally, behaviors or actions.
Sensation, perception, feelings, thoughts, actions. So when we feel overwhelmed, it's because that sequence is out of whack.
It's usually because our internal metronome, our quick, agitated bodily pulses, is just out of sync with what's happening outside.
But what's crucial here, I'm guessing, is that we don't just have to react to that sequence.
That's the key insight. While the system moves from sensation to action, we can consciously intervene at the very end of the sequence.
At the behavior or action step.
Yes. And by doing that, you can influence everything that comes before it.
That immediately gives us a sense of control. So if we can do that, what's the fastest way to pull one of these biological levers?
Well, that brings us right to our first takeaway, and it really challenges a core assumption most of us have about learning.
Okay.
Takeaway number 1, focus and urgency trigger lasting adult brain change.
The adult brain is stubbornly resistant to change. That feels true.
It really is. Unlike a child's brain, which is so pliable, for an adult brain to truly reorganize itself, to, kick off neuroplasticity, it needs high stakes.
So we're not just talking about casually reading a book.
No, we're talking about learning a new skill because your career depends on it, or that singular focus you get when a deadline is really looming.
It's the pressure. The pressure is what marks the moment for the brain.
Exactly. And mechanistically, this whole process is driven by the convergence of 2 specific neurochemicals.
Okay.
The first is norepinephrine, which is...
Or adrenaline, basically.
Exactly. It's adrenaline. And this creates that general alertness and that initial necessary agitation we talked about. It's like the cost of entry.
It's the signal that something important is happening. Okay, so what's the second chemical?
That would be acetylcholine. Acetylcholine acts like a very precise spotlight of attention. It literally marks the exact neural circuits that are involved in the difficult thing you're trying to do.
So norepinephrine turns up the volume, the intensity, and acetylcholine points the spotlight.
You've got it, the volume and the targeting.
So if I'm hearing you right, that awful feeling I get when I'm, say, learning a new language or struggling with a spreadsheet, that's not a sign that I'm bad at it.
No, not at all. That's the norepinephrine system warming up the circuits. You have to push past that agitation for the learning to actually stick.
So that discomfort it's the gate I have to pass through.
It is the gate. And here's a really surprising detail. The actual rewiring, the heavy lifting of brain reorganization, It doesn't even happen during the struggle.
When does it happen?
It consolidates later, mostly during deep sleep and rest cycles, which means the intensity of your focus now determines the quality of the change that happens later.
Wow. That is such a powerful way to reframe things. So for anyone listening, the next time you feel that frustration starting a task, don't see it as a setback.
See it as the start of the neuroplastic process. Lean into it.
Okay, so let's talk about leaning in. You can push through agitation, but, everyone has a limit. What happens when that pressure just builds and builds and you feel that urge to just bail?
Right. And that brings us to takeaway number 2. Dopamine buffers the chemical shutdown that causes quitting.
A chemical shutdown?
Yeah, when we exert that really hard focused effort, the kind tied to norepinephrine, noradrenaline, starts to accumulate in the system.
Okay.
And if it hits a certain limit without some kind of countermeasure, the brainstem essentially overrides your cognitive control.
So you just quit.
You quit. You lose the ability to continue the deliberate action. That is the chemical basis for quitting. And it feels horrible.
So the urge to quit isn't some kind of moral failing. It's a chemical warning.
Right.
It's like a circuit breaker tripping.
Precisely.
Right.
And dopamine is the chemical that stops the breaker from tripping. It's the countermeasure.
How does that work?
Dopamine gets released when we achieve a milestone. Or, and this is crucial, when we believe we are on the right path toward a reward. And that release actively suppresses the accumulating noradrenaline.
That makes perfect sense. It's the difference between grinding away at some endless task versus working on a project where you feel like you're making real, measurable progress. The second one feels energizing.
That's the buffering action. It gives you more sustained energy, more focused time. The problem is, if we only attach our satisfaction to some massive goal way off in the future, we never get those little dopamine hits we need along the way.
So the practical move is to internalize the reward system. Don't wait for your boss to praise you 6 months from now.
Exactly. Reward yourself for hitting smaller, self-directed goals. Did you finish that difficult introduction?
Yeah.
Did you find that one critical source you were looking for? Give yourself a quick internal hit of dopamine, some positive self-talk, even just some mental check work.
And that little micro reward signals to your brain, hey, we're on the right track, keep going.
You're building an internal resilience buffer.
Okay, so the immediate action step. Set a micro milestone for your next tough activity. Maybe it's just finish the first 2 pages of notes, and then right when you hit it, give yourself that internal reward.
This leads us right back to that core principle we started with. If dopamine helps us keep going, how do we even start in the first place when we're feeling low and unmotivated?
Right.
And that is takeaway number 3. Run your nervous system backwards. Action must lead.
So we remember the sequence. Sensation, perception, feelings, thoughts, and then action.
Right. And the most effective way to modify your internal state, your mood, your thoughts, is to intervene at the end of that chain.
Start with a concrete behavior.
Exactly. Think about it. Trying to control your mind with your mind. Like trying to force yourself to think positive.
It's exhausting, and it rarely works.
It's often an exercise in futility. It just leads to more mental wrestling.
So if I'm in a mental funk, trying to feel motivated before I start working is the wrong way to go about it.
It's the wrong approach entirely. You're trying to affect the chain at the feelings or thought stage. The power is at the end of the chain.
The power is in the action.
The physical movement, the behavior, sends a chemical signal that shifts the entire cascade. It changes your perception, and then your feelings will follow.
Mood follows action.
That's the truth behind the maxim.
It's so relatable. The classic example is, you don't feel like going for a walk. Don't wait until you feel like it.
No, just the simple act of putting on your shoes and stepping out the door, that will trigger the chemical shift much faster than trying to negotiate with your own thoughts.
So the micro step for this one is incredibly simple. When you're feeling stuck, just perform a concrete action.
Start the chore, open the document, walk around the block, anything. Don't sit and negotiate with your feelings.
Okay, so let's shift gears now. We've talked about finding focus. What about finding calm? What about those moments when we are just too activated?
Yeah, when the anxiety is high, the monkey mind is running wild.
Takeaway number 4 gives us an instant fix for this. Instantly calm high stress with the double inhale.
For states of high anxiety, for that internal frenzy, the fastest and most reliable way to bring your autonomic arousal down is a specific technique called the physiological sigh.
I've heard about deep breathing, but sometimes it just feels like it makes me more aware of my own panic. Why is this different? Why is it more effective than just one big deep breath?
That is a great question, and it all comes down to the mechanics of your lungs. When we're stressed, the tiny little air sacs in our lungs, they're called alveolar.
Okay.
They actually collapse, and this prevents the efficient offloading of carbon dioxide. And it's the elevated CO2 in your blood that actually drives that feeling of stress and panic.
So we need a way to get rid of that CO2. How does the physiological side do that?
The technique is 2 short, rapid inhales, ideally through the nose,
2 inhale.
2 in a row, and then they're immediately followed by 1 extended long exhale through the mouth.
So what's the magic in that second little inhale?